I am here barking into some continuous lecture series. So it was difficult for me to choose a topic. So what I thought, I will just try to tingle your brains, right? So give you some puzzles and ask you to write code for those puzzles, right? And as I talked to Ramji, that you have already covered quite a few concepts here: arrays, basically lists, tuples, and similarly for loop, while loop. Okay. So what I want to talk about here is how to write programs. So given a problem, how do you convert it into code? So you will say you are learning all this in Python, right? So what's new here? So the thing is that when you are trying to solve a problem, there are two components to it. One is about solving the problem itself, and second one is telling the computer how to execute those steps in solving the problem. So the first step is independent of language. Okay, it does not matter whether you are solving in Python or C or C++. And the second step is where you come to a specific language. It can be C, it can be Python or Java, or maybe assembly language if you are really keen on performance and the control, right? So many times students come and say, oh Dev, how many languages should I learn to get a good job? What we tell them is, it's not important to learn languages, it's important to learn how to solve a problem, and it's important to learn one language so well that any new language you can just take the book and should be able to understand. See, different languages have different syntax, right? So this is like, how many of you have learned to drive a car or a bike? So did you learn to drive a Maruti car or a Hyundai car or a BMW? Or similarly in bike, did you try to learn Hero Honda or Kawasaki Bajaj or some other bike? It's not like that, right? You learn how to drive a bike. But then actually when you learn, you either drive Hero Honda or Suzuki. Tomorrow if a new bike comes, then it will take you few minutes or maybe 1 hour to learn this new bike. Okay, you are not going to go back and say, oh, let me see where the gears are, let me see what first gear is, what second gear is. All this should come naturally to you if you know how to ride a bike. Okay, so that's similarly, that is the same thing in programming language. It's not about which language you learn. Any language you learn, focus on concepts like if then else, while loop, for loop, functions, maybe if the language is deep then pointers or arrays and so on, data structures. You don't have to worry about how C does it, how Python does it. And to take an example, this is my first challenge problem, which I call inverse factorial. Okay, so everyone here knows factorial, right? I think all of you are in engineering, so factorial is kind of bread and butter. Every maths course, every programming course will have factorial function. So it has become kind of something which you know. Even in sleep I ask how to write a factorial program, you will get up and write it either recursively or using loop or in any way. So that's why I changed the problem. My problem is to compute what I call inverse of a factorial. And what is the challenge? Given a positive integer n, which is again positive is greater than 0, find a value k, integer value, such that k factorial is less than equal to n and k plus 1 factorial is above n. Okay, so this is kind of an inverse function. Given n, I want to find a k whose factorial approximates n. Okay, so please try to solve this puzzle. Anything that you don't understand about the problem. Okay, so all of you know how to compute factorial, but I have twisted it a little bit. So rather than giving a k and find out k factorial, and giving you n and you have to find out what k should give k factorial, which is closest to n. role is not here to check all of you write the program correctly. That part you can continue later. So I would like to probe some things. How many of you are really trying this problem right now to solve it? So some of you probably have given up. So okay, it's almost everyone. Second thing, how many of you have started coding? I thought 3, 4 years. Okay, you started typing the code on Python. Okay, how many of you started writing some kind of pseudocode on piece of paper? You started with writing. Okay, and the final question: how many of you used some values of n and tried to figure out value of k manually? What value of n? It's only 4 people. Okay, so that is the thing I want to bring to your attention. So what happens in programming? It's very tempting to jump on computer and start typing the code. It's not at all good if you are learning, if you are novice, if you are not very advanced programmer. And therefore what I am going to describe today, this is my main lecture, something called a 7-step approach, which is devised by some researchers who teach programming. Okay, so 7-step, again it could be 6 for you, it could be 8 for you, but what it says, and we will do it in much more details, it tells you about how to go from problem to code. So the moment I gave you a problem, some of you started writing on piece of paper, some of you started coding. Okay, but especially for novices, we should follow certain discipline and we should follow few steps which are very, very important. Please take this as a takeaway from today's lecture. It's never a good idea to start typing your code immediately after seeing the problem. So what should you do instead? Okay. Again, it might look like we are going to waste a lot of time. You could have written the program in that time. But as your problem becomes complicated in real life, spending few minutes understanding the problem, looking at input-output will save you a lot of time in later stages when you have to debug or remove the mistakes. Okay, so here I go. The first 4 steps. Okay, so I asked for those steps in kind of reverse. So the very first step, when you should see a problem. Okay, and this is something you have been doing in maths or physics also. It is not to write program or not to try to solve it. The first thing is you should take some example. You should take an instance and try to work it out yourself. Okay. So when I say give me k such that k factorial is less than equal to n, it is less than k plus 1 factorial. The problem, even though the statement is very crisp, very formal, it is still even for me, it was not very clear what is it that is being asked. Okay. The idea is you use some values of k and n to figure out what really you are trying to solve. Okay. And as I said, factorial is a problem where I won't claim you should directly start coding, because you have been doing this thing, examples since class 10th, I think, 9th or 10th. Given a number, you compute its factorial by hand, so you know what to do. But this inverse factorial is something new, so you should start with some examples. Okay, so let's take some examples. So if my n is 6, what should be the k? Okay, so I have to find out the k such that k factorial is less than equal to 6 and this is less than k plus 1 factorial. Okay. At this point I don't worry about how I get this k, I just have to figure out some values. So I am trying this instance. So I can try manually. 1 factorial is 1, 2 factorial is 2, so clearly it's wrong. So 2 factorial is 2, 3 factorial is 6. Okay, so with k equal to 2, I get 4 factorial, 4 less than equal to 6 less than 6. Okay, so be very careful. I have inequality on the right hand side, so even k equal to 2 does not work. K equal to 3 will be 6 less than equal to 6 less than 24. Okay, so for n equal to 6, my answer should be 3. Right? So I do this manually. So this is called work out an instance, right? So before you go into even writing algorithm on paper, many times your teacher might have told you draw a flow chart. What is a flow chart? Again, did anyone tell you what is a flow chart scientifically? I have never seen any teacher. They just show you some examples. They tell you about different boxes, but it's not very clear how to connect those boxes. You learn it from experience. For gaining that experience, you have to do what I am doing just now. Take some examples, solve them manually. Okay. So you did work out an instance. Now you have to write down exactly what you did. So what did I do in some simple English? I mean, it's again for your own consumption. You are not going to show it to anyone. So what I did informally, at least if I don't want to write it down, but speak it up. So can someone say what was I trying here? Yes? So I was taking a number k, computing its factorial, computing k plus 1 factorial, checking whether 6 lies between k plus 1, k and k plus 1. Okay, I can try another example. So and so on. This is what you have to now write in your own code language, but in a precise terms. There should be no ambiguity. When I say increase by 1, I have to check that equality is there on left hand side but not on right hand side. So those kind of things. Again, this problem is very simple. In some sense, what I did for one number will work for all other numbers. So some of the things I won't be able to show right now, but you have to understand that. Okay. The third step is now once you know how to solve one instance or two instances, now think about how you can generalize this. Okay, again this is like a pseudocode, a simple English where you are trying to describe. So what you will do is, now your solution will have some kind of structure. It will say either while or for, whatever you are comfortable with. So as long as k factorial is less than n, I will increment k, compute k factorial, k plus 1 factorial, and check whether n lies between k and k plus 1. Things like this. Okay. So interestingly, sometimes what can happen, the examples that you choose in case of complex problems, you may not find a pattern from one or two instances, in which case you have to go back, try another instance, go back, try another instance, and so on. Okay. In particular, what happens here? Here I have some small corner case where people get confused. Even though the problem statement is quite clear, what if I have n equal to 1? Now if I look for 0, k equal to 0, because k is greater than or equal to 0, then 0 factorial is 1. So for n equal to 1 is my answer 0, or should it be 1? Because 1 factorial is also 1. Okay, so this is a kind of corner case. You have to be careful with corner case. Is the answer 0 or 1? Will it be 0? 0 factorial less than or equal to 1, less than 1 factorial. This is false. 1 factorial is 1. So the answer should be 1. Okay. If I change the inequality, then 0 is the correct answer. So again, be little careful. In this case, you will be lucky because most of you will select 1. But when you are trying these instances, make sure you are taking into account all constraints given by the problem statement. See, when I teach this course to first year students or some other students, most of the time they are solving it correct. They are on the right track, but they are so impatient that they forget one small constraint or other small constraint. Sometimes they miss out on the fact that number n is going to be greater than 0. So they spend whole time in trying to handle n less than 0, even though problem says it can never happen. So be very, very careful, read problem statements carefully, and then also write your steps carefully. Once you have written your steps, the fourth step is testing this. So just like I had some steps in mind, I tested with different values of n, different values of k, and so on. Okay. So during testing, it's a very, very important concept. In fact, if you know those who have some experience with software companies, there are separate divisions just to test your code. So a developer writes a code, there is a separate team which tries to break this code. Okay, so testing is a very, very important activity, you do that. And suppose, again you might find a problem in the testing step, so then you have to come back to step 3. If step 3 you can't find pattern, you have to come back to step 1 and so on. Okay. Though this may look a lot of work, with practice you will be able to do it very quickly, probably in few minutes. Okay. Once these 4 steps are done, you will go to the 5th step, which is not shown here. But again note that these 4 steps are independent of programming language. In fact, they are independent of your mother tongue. You can think in Hindi, you can think in English, you can think in Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, whatever you are comfortable with. These 4 steps are free of language. Okay? You are given a puzzle, you have to solve it. But these 4 steps are important because if you make mistake in this 4 step, it does not matter if whether you are a champion of C programming or Python programming, and result is going to be wrong. Okay? So here are the rest of the steps. The 5th step is where now you are now touching the computer. You are now writing a code which is specific to a programming language, and all that you are doing in this course is in some sense translating from 4th step to 5th step. Most of the time you will be given some solution or some idea about the solution. You have to convert it to a program. Okay? But in real life that won't be the case. You have to come up with your own solution. Then from once you have the code, it has been translated. The next step is you have to test your code. Again, what you must be doing when you run program, you give some input, you look at the output. You either do it manually or you have certain some way of doing automatic testing. Okay, but this testing will once again identify some problem, which means program might be incorrect. Then another important activity comes in the picture. It is called debugging. Okay, again in programming courses we tend to ignore this activity, but it's very, very important. You have to systematically look for errors in your program. Again, these errors can be of 2 types at high level. One is that your implementation is incorrect. You solved the puzzle correctly, but by typing the code, you missed out on less than or equal to. By mistake, you type less than. Okay, that can happen. You are in a hurry. Instead of less than equal to, you wrote less than. So this is called a typographical error. Your typing mistake has happened, some implementation mistake has happened. So you go back from step 7 to step 5, fix your code, go to step 6, 7 as long as you are fixing it. But there can be a bigger issue as well. Maybe the steps, the 4 steps you used, they were okay for certain inputs, they were not okay for some other inputs. Testing can discover those inputs as well. So now you have to go back to step 3 or step 1 and refine your solution. Okay. So these are the 7 steps which will help you converting a given English or natural language problem into a code, where you have to also find a solution. Step 1 to 4 are solving it without programming language. 5, 6, 7 are translating a solution into programming code. Okay, and if all program tests pass, then your program appears to be correct. Okay, I am not saying it is correct, because once again some smart person might find some issue in your program that you are not able to find. So the other person will try to break your program. But as far as typical courses are concerned, the program is correct. Okay, so these are the 7 very important steps. You should remember them. These are with practice, these steps will start merging with each other. So for example, when you get more practice, you need not do step 1, 2, 3 separately. You can solve multiple instances in one shot and then generalize it in one shot. Okay. So, but it's important that you do things systematically. In long run, it is going to save you a lot of time. Instead of the moment you see the problem and jumping onto code, right? So I will discuss another very interesting problem. It's called generating prime numbers. Okay. for this problem, what I will do is I will do first 4 steps and in some sense go with you for step number 5, 6 and 7. Okay, so that's what will be our agenda. So when I say generating prime numbers, how many of you know about prime numbers? What have you done with prime numbers till now? I mean, not about the application in here and there. So have you written program to test a number is prime or not in any language? So can you test a given number whether it is prime or not? Do you know how to do that? Yes? So if I give you a number 33, how will you test whether it is prime or not? So basically if I ask whether 33 may be very easy, 138, is also easy. But 137, is it prime or not? So how will you do it? Sorry? Right. Again, mentally you know that clearly 2 is not a good number to start with. You will start from 3. For 3 you know that is number. You will find out whether 3 divides it, whether 4 divides it, 5 divides it and so on. Right? That is how the simplest algorithm works. Start from 2, check if it 2 divides this, 3 divides this, 4 divides this and so on. Right? Please, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So how long should I go? Where should I stop? 136? I will try dividing with 2, then I will try dividing with 3, then I will try dividing by 4 and so on. Okay? So now I feel very good that most of you have not probably thought about this problem, so we can think about it together. Can you improve it? See, division is a tough operation for humans also, for computers also. You should try to minimize number of divisions. Okay, if this number is prime, you will have to divide by about 136 numbers. Now if I ask you 10,571, then you will be dividing by 10,570 different numbers, which is going to be really slow. Some improvement from your side.
So we can go from 2 to 127 divided by 2.
So you can go up to 137 divided by 2. So about 68, right? Or 69. So immediately you have speed up your program by a factor of 2. If earlier it was taking 20 minutes, now it will run in about 10 minutes. Okay? I'm just taking number from my head. It will be few seconds actually. Can you improve it even further? Can you bring down this number even further down? Just mathematics, no programming, nothing. So suppose for time being 68 divides this number, what will be the other number? So suppose this number is 138 and I go up to 138 by 2. This is 69. Okay, 69 if it divides it, what is the other number? 69 times 2. But that means 2 must have already divided. Okay. Similarly, if I come to 67, I am testing whether 67 can divide 137 or not. Whether 67 can divide 137 or not. This is what I am trying to check. The other factor will be about 2. But if 68 was dividing 137, then it must have been checked by 2 itself. Okay, so I don't have to go all the way up to 68. If this factor is there, if n by 2 is a factor, then other factor will be 2. If n by 3 is a factor, the other factor will be 3. So I can still reduce use this factor. I need not go all the way up to n by 2. So up to what point should I go? See n, suppose my number is p and I have factor as n times m. Only then p is not prime. Okay? Should I go all the way up to n or m, or can I do something better? I have to go to the smaller of these two. Smaller of these two will tell me whether p is prime or not. Okay? Right? So now I want to figure out, make sure the smaller of these two is the biggest. Okay? And that will happen when n and m are same. So I have to go up to, this is the kind of worst case scenario. Both the factors are same. N is square. Okay? So I really have to go up to square root of 137. Is this point clear? See, a number will have two factors. I mean, if it has a n as factor, the other factor is m. Okay? I only need to go up to the smaller factor. I need not check both n as well as m. Now, this smaller factor, the largest value of that can be square root of b. If I have a factor bigger than square root of p, then I also have a factor which is smaller than square root of p. Right? If I have p has two factors m times n, if one of them is bigger than this, the other one will be smaller than root p. So going up to root p is sufficient. And now you can see that from 68, we come down to how much? 15 square is 225. 11 square is 120. So 12 square. So nearly 12. Right? 12 square is 144. If 137 has to have a factor, it has to be smaller than 12. Is smaller or equal to 12. Right? So from 136 we are down to 12. It means 10 times improvement. You only have to try 10 divisions. Okay? So this is one way. But, and again, if you are writing a program to check a given number n is prime or not, you will have a loop, something like for some I going from 2 to square root of n, and then if I divides, so again you will have routines for everything, and then compose. Okay, and once you are out of this loop, then you will say n is prime. So this is the kind of pseudocode for testing whether n is prime or not. You don't have to go any further. The moment you find one factor, you are done. Okay. So is this part clear? Again, this is not Python. This is some English-like language. Okay. You have to translate it to Python. Please do so. Okay. Now the problem that I want you to solve is little different. Okay. I am still doing lot of divisions here. In first case for 137, I will do 12 divisions. Okay. And the problem that I am going to give is even complicated. I don't want to test whether a given number is prime. What I want to do is, I will give you a number n. I want you to give me all prime